Don't let the IMF and the West blow what we're accomplishing in the Ukraine. The revolution in the Ukraine is extraordinary. As you know, I worked with Yushchenko, who won the election and first freed the Ukraine in 2009. But since then, the Russians have moved back in and are trying to make the Ukraine a permanent part of the Russian Empire the way it used to be. But now, with the revolution in the streets and the overtures to Europe, it looks as if the Ukraine will now veer to the West and be integrated into Europe. One danger is that Russia might actually invade or encourage a separatist movement among the Russian-speaking provinces in the eastern third of the Ukraine. But one of the major threats is that the Ukraine is bankrupt because this president absolutely ripped it off for years. You may have seen the videos of this palace he built for himself as his personal residence. The corruption of his administration was extraordinary. And Ukraine is now stuck with no money and huge debts. Russia was going to bail out the Ukraine with $15 billion of loans without any financial strings attached, just a lot of political ones. And in turning away from Russia, the Russians have now canceled or suspended that loan. The question is, will the US and Europe and the IMF step up and take the place of that loan? And that's going to be a key issue. Now, the IMF is making noises of saying, oh, we're going to insist on austerity measures and draconian budget cuts and subsidy cuts and spending cuts before we write any money. The head of the IMF gave a statement that was not very encouraging. All he would say is, we're in touch with all the interested parties. Yeah. Well, that IMF recipe for the Ukraine would kindle a recession. And you don't want to give these people who have just attained freedom a year and a half or 2 years of total misery, because the odds of them turning back to Russia are formidable. Russia's going to offer the aid without any financial strings attached at all. And eventually you do want to impose those conditions on the Ukraine, and eventually Europe will. But now isn't the time for it. Now is the time to get some money into that country so that they can become whole. There isn't a civil war. There isn't a secession of the eastern provinces, and they become solidly a part of the Western Bloc. Because once you have the Ukraine, you really have everything you need in Central Asia. So I'm very worried that the IMF and the US are going to do that. Obama's attitude toward the Ukraine has been hands-off, not to talk about it much, to urge both sides to refrain from violence. And the heavy lifting has been done by the European Union. I'm worried now that that will turn over to the IMF, and that the IMF will resist giving the aid that really is vitally necessary. Thanks very much for watching.